Welcome to Off Balance, the podcast where faith, family, and business collide. I'm Dr. Brooks, a certified master life coach, transformational speaker, and author. Join me as we explore the journey of overcoming adversity and developing resilience. It's time for you to find your strength and reclaim balance. This is Off Balance.
Welcome to Off Balance, the podcast where faith, family, and business collide, and we get real about navigating it all with grace and grit. Today, we're talking about something that sounds a little off at first, and that's getting comfortable with making others uncomfortable. I know, that doesn't sound like a verse you'd embroider on a pillow, right? But hear me out. Let me start with a quick story. So, a couple of weeks ago, I noticed my husband, he was just walking around the kitchen and I could tell that he was kind of irritated. He was a little annoyed. I asked, what's wrong? He said, the neighbor was cutting his grass again. Now, for most people, that may sound like a dream. You get free lawn service, right? But here's the thing. My husband takes a lot of pride in caring for our home. And to him, this felt like the neighbor was overstepping a boundary. My husband likes the grass a certain height, and he says the neighbor cuts, his grass too low. And so to my husband, it wasn't a favor. It was actually frustrating. But instead of saying something to the neighbor, he just stayed silent. And I'm like, why don't you just go outside and talk to him and just let him know, don't cut your grass. While you appreciate the gesture, don't cut the grass. And just to give you guys context, the area that I'm talking about is the patch that's in between the homes. And so you can be nice and cut your neighbors, but my husband doesn't like it. So it's just the patch that goes alongside our properties, the front yard. It goes from the back gate all the way to the street. And so sometimes the neighbor, when he's cutting, he'll go ahead and cut my husband, not realizing that my husband likes his grass a certain height. And so it doesn't need to be cut at the moment. And so again, my husband stayed silent. Why? Because he didn't want to make the neighbor uncomfortable. Does that sound familiar? How many times have you done the exact same thing? You let someone cross the line, not because we, agree with it, but because we simply did not want the awkwardness that comes with speaking up. So sometimes what happens is we sacrifice our own peace to keep someone else from feeling uneasy, to keep someone else from feeling uncomfortable. But here's the truth. Protecting peace doesn't always feel peaceful in the moment, right? I'm not talking about being confrontational. So let's just back that up for a moment. I am just talking about that protecting your peace sometimes doesn't always feel peaceful in the moment. There is a fear of discomfort. And so I'm going to break this down a bit. Why is it so hard to make someone else uncomfortable even when we need to? I think deep down, many of us confuse discomfort with dishonor, especially as, people of faith. We're taught to be kind, to be peacemakers, to turn the other cheek. And those teachings are true and they're also beautiful. But kindness isn't the same as compliance. Being a peacemaker isn't the same as being a people pleaser. Jesus made a lot of people uncomfortable, and he did it with love and truth. He spoke the hard truth. He turned over tables. He walked away when boundaries were crossed, and that wasn't cruelty, that was simply clarity. And I think sometimes we get being nice confused, being kind confused. And so discomfort isn't always a bad thing. And so here's something that helped me shift my perspective. Discomfort doesn't always mean damage. Sometimes it means growth. I want you to think about when you're working out. You're stretching a muscle that hasn't been used in a while. It's uncomfortable, but it's building strength. I know for myself, I haven't ran in a couple of years and I just recently started back running. And now my chest is all jumpy. I'm sore. My neck is sore. And I am just miserable. And so I am like, well, am I sore because I'm running back out, or am I having chest concerns? And so I did make an appointment with my doctor, but I said all that to say it's uncomfortable when you're building strength, right? Relationships are the same way. When we avoid discomfort, we avoid opportunities to grow ourselves and others. By not telling the neighbor, hey, we appreciate your help, but we've got the yard taken care of, we might think we're preserving harmony, but really we're allowing resentment to take root. Not saying that resentment has taken root in my husband, but that's what can happen over time if you just allow boundary after boundary after boundary after boundary to be crossed. And at that root grows deeper every time we choose silence over honesty. And I always say honesty is the best practice, you know. So, what does it look like every day in family, faith, and business? What does living this out look like? In family, maybe it means telling your kids no to something, even if it disappoints them, because you're protecting their long term values and not their short term feelings. In faith, it can look like maybe, standing firm in what you believe, even when it makes people uncomfortable in conversation, not to argue or to prove a point, but to be faithful to what you know to be true. In business, it can look like telling a client, the deadline doesn't work for me, or letting a team member go when they are not a good fit. It's hard, but it's necessary. Boundaries are not walls to keep people out, they are doors, clear, intentional spaces that let the right things in and keep the wrong things out. And yes, opening or closing that door might make some uncomfortable, but it also makes room for authenticity, for honesty, for real connection. And so I just wanted to share that story because I want everyone to be comfortable with making other people uncomfortable. If it's something that you struggle with, you're not alone. But here's a few ways that you can grow, right? I want you to start small. Practice saying no in low stake situations. That is going to build muscle of discomfort tolerance, right? So when it's a low stake situation, go ahead and get your practice in, and that way you're going to build muscle. And the second thing is, I want you to use clear but kind language. I really appreciate your help, but I've got it covered this time. Or you could say, thanks for thinking of me, but I'm not able to commit to that. The third thing, pray for wisdom and courage. Ask God to help you discern, when to speak up and how. He promises to give us wisdom generously, so you just have to ask Him. And the fourth thing is, I want you to remember your why. You're not being difficult, you're being faithful to yourself, to your family, and to your vision that God has given you. And so I no longer want you to be uncomfortable so that someone else can be comfortable, right? I really want you to start speaking up for yourself, and I really want you to start stating when things, make you feel aggravated, or when things make you feel annoyed. It's okay to say something. Everything is not a confrontation. I think somewhere along the way we have taken the word confrontation and we made it so negative. All confrontation is not a bad thing, right? And so you have to be an advocate for yourself, and you just really have to learn to speak up when people are crossing boundaries. And so I just want to encourage you. You are not responsible for how other people feel about your boundaries, but you are responsible for walking in truth and love. You can be both kind and clear. You can be full of grace and grounded in truth. And sometimes the most loving thing you can do is make someone just a little bit uncomfortable. You're like, Dr. Brooks, really? Yes. Sometimes you can make someone just a little bit uncomfortable, and that can change the trajectory of their life. That can push them into the area that God has for them. You just never know. Because in real relationships, people can handle a little discomfort, and that's just how we grow. So this is a short episode today, but I just wanted to get that out there because I really want to encourage you. So thanks for hanging with me. If this episode stirred something in you, maybe a relationship you need to revisit or a boundary that you've been avoiding, I love to hear about it. You feel free to shoot me a message or share this episode with your friends who need to hear it. Also, thank you so much for sharing, for liking, for subscribing to this channel. I do appreciate it. Until next time, I want you to keep walking the line of faith, family, and business with intention and grace. This is Off Balance, and you are doing better than you think. Let me say that again. You are doing better than you think. Even if you look back over your life in the last 2 years, I bet you will be able to see so much proof of growth. And so I just want to encourage you to keep going. Don't stop, because this is the time for you to really perfect those things that God has given you. So again, be good. And I cannot wait for the next episode.
Thank you for tuning in. Be sure to rate this episode and share it with your family and friends. To learn more about your host, visit brooksdenny.com. Until next time, be resilient.
Hi, I'm Tiffany of Tiffany Brown Designs. With over 20 years of creative experience across industries, I create and elevate brands one design at a time through intentional graphic and brand design, polished film and video editing, and creative artistry. Even the music you're hearing right now, that was produced by me. I also create custom tracks for websites, intros and outros, and content. So what are you waiting for? Visit TiffanyCBrownGD.com and let's bring your vision to life.